Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Inside Scoop with Alex and Jeff. I'm Alex Dingman.
I'm Jeff Doss. Let's do this, guys.
With us today is the one, the only, the legend, Jackson Rudolph.
Yes, welcome, Jackson.
Thank you guys very much. It's an honor to be on here.
Awesome, man. It's good to see you. Good to finally talk to you face to face. It's been a while, and we've all enjoyed hearing your podcast as well. So it's kind of cool to see how it's kind of coming around now and kicking off this year, our first episode of 2020 with Jackson Rudolph. So pretty awesome, man. What's been going on? What you been doing?
Nothing much, man. I mean, like you said, I'm really excited about getting the podcast started of my own. And honestly, you guys were the guys that inspired me to really kind of make the jump and start doing it. I've always Yeah, absolutely. And I've always been a huge consumer of anything martial arts media. Back when Jacob Wolfman was doing his Facebook show that he would do, I love tuning at the new Sport Martial Arts Minute thing that's been going on that Emily's doing. She's doing a great job with that. And I think that the more media that we can get out there, the better, because coverage is what's been missing from sport karate for so long. It's like nobody knows who's won what or who's done what because there's no record of it. And so the more media coverage that we have, the more conversation we have, the more people we have talking about it, the better it is for our sport. That's how we start to grow. I mean, these are the types of things that will eventually become the ESPN talk show, stuff like that, when sport karate actually does find a way to make it big, which I'm sure we'll get into because that's something that I'm passionate about. I'm happy to have my own podcast and try to contribute to that as an active competitor. And I think that what you guys do, as I know, Jeff, you still get out there. Alex, you just fought at Diamond, so I don't mean to call you guys inactive competitors, but as competitors that have been around.
Up and down.
We dip our feet in both ends of the pool.
Yeah. It's funny too how, because you, Jackson, you've been in competition for a long time, but you didn't come up when the magazine was big or when there were magazines, you know what I mean?
That's true.
And Alex, you were kind of on the tail end. NASCA didn't really have one much. For NBL, it was huge. That was the main thing until it stopped around 2008, 2009. And people still are complaining about that, not having the magazine. And, but this is the new level of that. I mean, I think that's where, the Facebook stuff, to everything like that. But at the same time, we have to make it a little bit more organized where it is an official result that's posted, not just, hey, this guy posted he won first place or whatever. Sometimes they just have a trophy that their buddy won and they're standing next to it. You know what I mean? So
word.
But I mean that's you didn't come up with that, so this is that new kind of thing for us to push forward. So
in my opinion, that's one of the things that makes the diamond ring so special. It's not just the fact that it's the diamonds, but it's all
in there.
You're going to be on that pamphlet every year.
Every year. Yeah. And that's the way I always felt with Super Grands too. It's like, this is the only thing, the reason we're like, why does this get bigger and bigger every year? Well, because they actually put the results in there from the year before all the time. And those are the two tournaments, really the only ones.
There used to be others that have done
Bluegrass
that in the past.
did and DC used to. Those are the two that used to do it all the time. And,
I think New England used to. A lot of them used to.
Yeah.
But they just kind of got away from it. I think they just looked at it as like it was more work. You know what I mean?
And there's more grands now than there was then too.
Changes.
Divisions.
You ain't lying.
Yeah. So
we've been talking about that.
Yeah.
But what were you just doing? Because we had a combo before. So tell us what you're doing at school and what do you do with your time?
Oh yeah. So what I just got finished doing before we jumped on the podcast, I was teaching some Skype sessions. So I actually teach private lessons via Skype, for about 2 or 3 hours every night during the week. I guess you could call that my day job a little bit, as I go to classes Monday to Friday, and then in the afternoons, Monday to Friday, I teach these Skype lessons. I've got about 25 students that I keep on a rotating schedule. I structure my Skype sessions a little bit differently than how a lot of current world champions coaches do theirs. I don't do one-time bookings. I mean, I do one-time bookings for Skype lessons, but the vast majority of my Skype lessons are people that book to be on my schedule, quote unquote. So these are kids that I'm seeing either weekly or bi-weekly for these 30-minute Skype checkup sessions where I'm continually watching their form, checking up on it, making changes, making the final preparations for Warrior Cup. And that's another thing that's unique about my coaching is I'm not somebody who has like one form that I teach when somebody comes to me and says, hey, I'm in the black belt division, I want a bow form. A lot of instructors do that. What I do is I look at the skill set that each student has and I create an individual, completely unique form in the moment for the student every time I make it for them. And so
that's what I'm talking about.
Kind of continually level that up.
Yeah. Yeah. You
That's
and I
so
had
important.
a combo about that before. I remember when we were in North Carolina, we talked about that, about how all of our students' forms look different. And it's not just about like making them look like us. Like they need to be themselves, So
There's a lot of people who do that though.
Oh no.
You know what I mean? There's a lot of people who will do lessons and you'll see it. And it was so strange to me when people say, when people criticize sport martial arts, and they say, man, it all looks the same. There's a reason why it looks the same. There's a reason why pop music sounds the same.
Because
it's the same people making all the same songs.
Right.
But like it can be the same for what we're doing. It's the same few people making all of those forms. And that can't be. So what you just said, Jackson, how you personalize it to that person and to that competitor, that's extremely important to do. And then it helps their creativity as well.
There's a lot of bow staff competitors right now that catch the criticism of, oh, well, like all the bow staff kids look like Jackson. What's funny about that is most of all the bow staff kids that actually look like me are the kids that don't train with me because they're the ones that I'm not telling to be different from me. Like all my,
right.
So they're just watching your videos, just trying to literally be like you.
Right. Yeah. And it's super honor, and I'm humbled to be able to inspire people in the fact that they want to look like me. But what I tell my kids that train with me regularly is it's like, if you look like me, the judges are going to compare you to me instead of comparing you to either your past self, comparing you to your other competitors, which is what you want. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
very true.
so on that one, when you were then at that stage or age, who did you want to look like?
Anybody on Paul Mitchell. I was like, one thing you guys got to understand is I have bled black and white from the minute that I started doing martial arts, because one of the first major tournaments that I went to was 2006 US Open. And I still remember, my dad can tell you the exact same.
I remember that.
I sat in the back row of the US Open at the night show, and I watched all these Paul Mitchell guys. I was watching Matt Immig, Lauren Carney, Caitlin Deschelle, etc., watching all these Paul Mitchell guys, and every single Paul Mitchell guy was going up there and winning. And I remember from like that US Open, I looked up at my dad and I was like, I'm going to be on that stage, I'm going to be on that team, and I'm going to win this tournament. And that was in 2006. I sucked in 2006. I was not a good martial artist in 2006. But that's what I looked up at my dad. That's what I said. That US Open, I had my first private lesson with Lauren. And that's where I kind of learned how to compete in the first place. And so it was always Paul Mitchell members that I was looking up to the most. I think that my biggest bow staff inspirations kind of after I was around the circuit for a while and started trying to kind of want to create my own style. I looked up to Corey Lutkus a lot because of how much he was doing to innovate bow staff.
Oh, yeah.
I looked up to Ross Levine and Nate Armstrade a lot. Those two did a ton. People don't realize how much Ross Levine did for innovating bow staff. He gets a ton of credit for his fighting, but he's one of the most influential bow staff competitors as well.
Big time.
So for bow specifically, those were three guys I looked up to a lot. And then I looked up to a lot of other martial artists as well. Matt Emig for his greatness being, in my opinion, the greatest CMX competitor of all time when you
Yeah.
combine forms and weapons. Kalman and his individual greatness. I mean, Kalman is the career standard that I try to live up to, being the weapons guy and dominating the men's weapons division. I mean, Kalman is who I model my career after. So a bunch of different inspirations for me, but
Correct.
those are just a couple of them.
Yeah. Well, and it's cool because, so like, you looked up to Corey, you looked up to Ross, but your style doesn't mimic them at all. So what you liked about them was that they were trying to be creative and do their own thing. And you said, instead of, I want to be like them, I want to take their creativity and make it my own in that. And it's always funny because that was the same way with me because I'm a kicker and people would think, well, aren't you because as I was coming, it was Carmichael Simon, John Valera, Mike Chat. You liked one of those three. That was it. John Valera was who I chose. John Valera is who I chose to be my instructor, and I wanted to find a way to get him, and so, but he isn't known as a kicker. He's known as an explosive person So I found a way to use that to create my own thing with that. And it's the same thing, and you saw certain people that would flock to that, what we talked about, flock to that private instructor. And then sometimes that private instructor would make them look like them when they didn't need to be like them. And I know someone we all know, we just mentioned, that happened to. And, and it was like, wait, do we know what's happening here? Like, he's not looking as good as he was because they're trying to make him a kicker when he shouldn't be a kicker. But, you know what I mean? Like, there's those types of things. And I think all of us can get in that way sometimes of like, we get successful at something and this is what they want, like for a while, everyone would be like, you need to teach me OG. I'm like, no, you don't need to do that for him. You need to do something else. It's like, and you're probably the same way. Teach me your traditional weapons form, right? And you're kind of like, well, why can't we design something better for you or you do something else, that's going to work for you? And, I think all of us learned that as instructors and competitors too. So.
Right. That's sick. No, you trained under JV. That's dope.
Yeah.
But it's also,
for me, so.
I'll tell you, it's really good. So look at what you just mentioned. So like John Valera was your coach, and he didn't try to make you him.
No. Exactly.
That's important. So that's a testament to him as well. Like he did a good job with that. So much like all of those people do. So there was a time I watched this happen. It was a long time ago, and Mike Chat would always go back to the AKA Grands, even when it was in a gym. Right. I went to it just because it was close to Minnesota and it was a big-ish tournament, and at that time it was small, right? Mm-hmm. So I went and I watched this happen because it was Mike frickin' Chat. I was like, at that time, I'm like, man, I want to be like that guy, right? But I couldn't because I was a little kid. And anyway, the point is, I watched this conversation happen and someone walks up to him and says, hey, I have your music. Is it okay with you if I use it? And it was a kid. So he's like, all right, fine. It's okay. Go ahead. But he watched the form and it was move for move, his form.
Yeah.
Same exact thing. So, and it's just, but people clapped and said how great he was. He's a kid, so they should dog him and, and criticize him. But at the same time, someone needs some help. You know what I mean? Someone needs to put their armor on him and say, you need to be your own person. You need to be your own man. Yeah. And that's a real important thing. And I remember watching you, Jack. So Jackson, you and I go back a little bit because we've had a little bit of a relationship just in the sense that I've been a fan of yours. All right. So I remember you on Change the Game, right? Yeah. And you were tearing it up there. Now, I'll just tell everybody, Jackson, just for those that don't know. So what I mean by this is it was a student of mine. He went to, this is when I'm in Chicago at this point. And, I tell him like, no, you gotta go to the Diamond Nationals. He's kid, love doing the ball. I was like, you gotta just go and watch this person named Jackson Rudolph. And I was certain that all he was going to have to do is watch you perform. And that was going to be it. And it was, right? Didn't that happen? Mm-hmm. It happened,
Remember
right?
this.
So that's what happened, right? This kid named Adrian and his mom. I kid you not. If they saw Jackson right now, they might throw up. They'd be so excited, right? So the next year they come again and they're just like, they go right up to you, right? They did this, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
They went right up to him and they just told him how great he was. And I'm just watching from afar, and Jackson approached it like a pro's pro. He really did. Just encouraging him, and probably never even saw the kid perform a lick, right? So the next year, the family got the dates wrong, couldn't go to the tournament. So this is the only time that they would really go and compete at that level, right? So they would go to the Diamond Nationals. So they can't go. They were like heartbroken. They couldn't believe it. They had a family thinking together, couldn't make it happen. I tell Jackson, I reached out to you ahead of time. You remember this? So I reached out to Jackson ahead of time and said, hey, this kid's broken up. You remember him. We talked last year, et cetera, et cetera. Jackson, this is for everybody listening. Listen to this. Jackson brings an autographed picture, personalizes it to this kid, Adrian, gives it to me. This kid has no clue this is happening, right? So the next week when he comes back to school after his big family vacation, I give it to him. I mean, Jackson's on cloud 9 because of what he did. Now, he didn't have to do any of this, none of this, right? But he understood just where he was, just as far as an influence on this person's life. And and when I say, Jackson, you were a pro's pro, that's really what I mean. Because, I mean, he could have just said, jump on the lake. I ain't got time for none of this. I'm here to compete. I got to perform. There's people trying to beat me. And that would have been appropriate and okay because that is what you were there for. But that's not how you approached it.
Right.
And I've had tons and tons of respect for you before and since and after that.
Thank you very much. And I mean, to me, that's the reason that I do what I do. You know, I have a strong belief that there's a limited number of reasons why someone should compete, right? Number one reason is you want to go out there and you want to have fun, right? That's the number one reason anybody should compete is they love what they do, they're passionate about what they do, and they want to have fun. So you get into competition because you want to have fun. That's phase 1. Phase 2 is when you either realize that you're good or you meet somebody that tells you that you're good. And so you start competing because you want to win, because you want to be great. You compete for greatness, right? And so that's with the phase 2 that anybody that's around sport karate for a long time, that's the phase that most of us are in, right? We start out because we want to have fun, and then it becomes more than just fun and games. You start wanting to win. You start wanting to be successful. You start wanting to make a name for yourself. And then a few of us make it into phase 3. And phase 3 is when you don't compete for anything personal. You don't compete because you're having fun. You don't compete because you want to be great, but you've already achieved some level of greatness and you compete because of what it means to everybody else watching you. And to me, that's the phase of my career that I've entered where it's like, you know, for me, I still have a ton of fun running both forms. You know, I still want to try to cement my legacy as being the greatest weapons competitor ever. That is the legacy that I want to try to cement. And I still got work to do to be able to say that I have that title. But to me, the reason that I continue to train and the reason that despite being at school, I continue to travel and compete and do all that, and the reason that I teach as much as I do is because I recognize how important it is to some of these kids who, you know, if I'm your favorite martial artist and all of a sudden I'm just not around anymore, then what's going to happen to those kids that are picking up their bow every day, that are using Jackson Rudolph bow staffs? What are they going to think? You know what I mean? So for me, the number one reason why I do what I do is for kids just like that and stories just like that. You know, if I can make, you know, one person every time that I run a form, if I can make one person, you know, have sport karate be what they want to do with their life, then I've succeeded with that form.
Awesome, man. Good stuff.
Yeah, I'd say so.
I love it. Jackson, what, and I think I kind of already know the answer, but that was the reason why I want to ask this question. What is the division that is your favorite and why?
Mm-hmm. I heard you guys talk about this in one of the recent episodes. And by the way, thank you for the Martial Arts Inter-Network Award for CMX Weapons. I appreciate that. I was surprised by some of the hesitation. I feel like winning 11 weapons overall tournament.
Oh,
so here we
fired
go.
On us.
Yeah, I knew it.
I'm just kidding. Anyway, what was I talking about? I got sidetracked. Talking about favorite division.
Right.
So, Jeff, you mentioned that you thought my favorite division is traditional weapons. To be honest, that's true sometimes. Like
Yeah.
it's up and down. You know what I mean? Like you guys were absolutely, you hit the nail on the head about how traditional weapons is my favorite because I like proving a point to people. And it's the number one criticism of me that's on social media from people that do martial arts, from people that don't do martial arts is
Yeah.
baton twirler. All you do is do tricks, this, that, and the other, yada, yada, yada. Right. And so my favorite division to do to prove people wrong is to do traditional weapons because that's where I can show I'm a martial artist. I can hit people hard. I can do a
Correct.
traditional weapons form.
Right.
You also brought up a good point when talking about NASCA traditional in the sense that NASCA traditional isn't true traditional. NASCA traditional weapons is really creative weapons forms made up of only traditional movements.
Right.
So you still get, some of the traditional sticklers that, even my traditional bow form isn't enough for them because it's a creative traditional bow form. But anyway,
Right.
so it's my favorite in the sense that I do enjoy proving people wrong with my traditional bow form. But I will say that there's nothing in this world like running a CMX bow form on stage in front of
Right.
a couple thousand people or on a
Right.
US stage. When it comes to like the feeling that I get running a form, like there's nothing like a US Open final CMX bow form. There's nothing in the world like that feeling.
Right.
So that's the feeling that I like most and that I enjoy most, that I get the most thrill out of. But you guys were absolutely right. Traditional weapons from just a proving people wrong standpoint and just getting out there and showing my technical ability and my power. I love competing in traditional weapons.
Yeah, I think what you had told me before is like, you would just like to show that it can beat whatever, and at this time too, when we were talking, traditional weapons it was all one weapons grant. It wasn't separated like it is now, and so you're like, I think I could beat, whoever would dare open one while I'm doing my traditional,
Mm.
And I think you definitely can, and as far as getting into the traditional thing and all that, I don't mind that division. I guess I don't like the title of it. You know what I mean? Like, I think that should be a creative limited or a creative weapons one, and then you do the whatever. But that's just, my opinion on it, because it kind of makes it to where there's still, no matter what, is a missing element of weapons. There's a division that doesn't exist where there are people that we could have a lot of people doing. I'm sorry, I hate saying the word real church form because who's to say what is real or not,
Right.
but
Exactly.
historical traditional weapons forms that have been passed down from generation to generation with those that were taught, within that years and years ago. So I think there should be a division like that, much like they added the Kempo finally in NASCA, much like they're doing more of that with the traditional challenge. And I think there needs to be some fix with that too. But, there's all kinds of things we can improve.
What I've always thought about, and Jeff, this is something that you might have a little bit better perspective on. One thing that I've always wondered is if you look at the history of NASCA traditional forms, not traditional weapons, but traditional forms, NASCA traditional forms went through a pretty significant phase in which they were doing what NASCA traditional weapons has been doing for the past 30 years.
Right.
There was a phase in which made up traditional forms dominate. I remember when I was
Yeah.
on stage for the first time, it was at Diamond Nationals in 2008 in traditional forms. I beat Ryan Wells in the runoff, which was a huge deal back then.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Wells was running a made up traditional form.
Yep.
I was running a hybrid traditional form. I was running a form that was half Saiyan Shin, half NP, but that was the standard then.
Yep.
The version of, I think they call it Goju Show that Will Cornell would run. That was a
Creative
form. And in my opinion, Will Cornell is a top 5 traditional form competitor all time.
He's good.
Yeah, I mean, he was a performer of traditional forms, which is hard to do.
Yeah.
Right up there with John Stu and others. But anyway, so it's fascinating to me how there was all of a sudden this moment kind of in the Jarrett Liker dominant era of traditional forms where there was this realization of like, oh, there's real traditional out there that we could be doing, but that transition was made for forms, but that transition was not made for weapons. And
right.
You to be the contemporary traditional and forms reverted to doing the WKF quote unquote real traditional style.
Right. Yeah.
All right, well, I'm gonna ask
it
a
was
different question on that.
Yeah, it was
though.
the same thing with Korean too. So
I'm gonna ask one on that. So on your explanation of that, do you care? Do you care?
I mean, intriguing.
traditional is. Do you care? Does it matter to you?
I mean, when it comes to me, if they split the division and they said, okay, we're going to have contemporary traditional where you guys can do what you've been doing, and we're going to have classical traditional where you have to do a form that's been passed down for generations, use an inch thick bow, whatever, I'd compete in both divisions. You know what I mean? Like
it's like that in WKU and WKC. Like the world tournaments, they do that. They have a hard style, which is and then they have the classical or whichever traditional kata or whatever it's called. NBL never did that. They just said Japanese this and that. They didn't have that kind of division. It was traditional. NASCA was the other way, but the world circuits kind of decide to really, in some ways, make it the way it should be. Have a hard style one, which is more like an Americanized karate. You know what I mean? When you really think about it.
See, for a world circuit, that makes a little bit more sense because there's a little bit more of a title involved. But when we're talking about an open tournament,
right?
And they say, Jackson, it's traditional form, and you have the opportunity to run a hybrid traditional or whatever a true traditional form is. Right. You do your hybrid traditional, and someone looks at you and goes, "Hey, that's not a real traditional form." Do you care? Do you care?
I mean, no, not particularly, but that's
exactly.
And that's why right now we still have a Japanese forms division and we have a traditional challenge division. Like essentially,
which doesn't make any sense.
Essentially, there should not be two different divisions for that. But the reason there is because well, there's a political reason, but reason within the rules is because of the fact that in the Japanese division, you can technically still run a made up Japanese style form, whereas
that's not winning.
Challenge you can't.
But that's not winning. So it's really just the same person that wins traditional challenge wins Japanese, and that's the problem. It should be a different thing. And so when I talked about with WKC, you had someone that won, I think it was Julian Suleiman, won with the traditional classical Okada, and Anthony Merrickx ran his hybrid form that it's still traditional in his style because it has been passed down from instructor and stuff. And he won the hard style division. So it was cool to see, that. And I have to respect that because it's not titled Japanese Okinawan. It's titled hard style or, whichever it is. And again, if it just says traditional form, that could be anyone's perspective. You know what I mean? So
that's another thing I think is really interesting is when you compare the two against each other. Like if you put Will Cornell against Ariel Torres, it completely depends on your panel. Because they're both equally skilled in their own way of doing traditional forms. Same thing if you put John Sue against Joey Castro. They're equally skilled in different ways.
These are really good points.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, that's
interesting. I'm just going to bring this up just because you mentioned him a couple times now. Will Cornell, we lived in a similar, like about an hour and a half from each other, right? This type of thing. So we competed against each other often, all the time. Will didn't do Japanese forms when we were starting to compete and really do that. He ended up doing that. Will did everything. When I say everything, I mean everything. In Japanese forms, the way he last did it was really what stuck. There's been a number of competitors that have done things like that, where they've just done things and sometimes they would get like a third, they would crack into getting like a third place and that would be like the highest they would get. Mm-hmm. And then they try this other division and it's like, nobody can touch him.
Yeah.
And it was like, where was that all this time? So I give the dude credit for that, big time.
Yeah.
Because he did it all. I mean, we're talking, the dude was a fighter. That dude did musical forms. He did open forms. He did bow forms. He did it all. And it didn't stick. Not like this did. Mm-hmm. So, hey, we're coming in 2020, Jackson. What's on the 2020 horizon for Jackson Rudolph?
So I'll still be doing a full competition season in 2020. And I'm excited about it. I'm going to bring out some new things this year. It's interesting over the past couple of years as the adult division has started to change a little bit. We've had some guys get hurt, some guys, get jobs and not be as active, that type of thing. Some new faces coming in. So the adult division is interesting because every year you get a little bit of a different flavor, with, the different people rotating through. So it's always a new challenge, always a new dynamic that you've got to learn to strategize against. And that's one thing about my game that a lot of people don't realize, and that a lot of sport martial artists, at least forms and weapons competitors, don't have, is that I use a lot of strategy in my game. So I have different tricks planned for different situations. If competitor A drops and competitor B hits, if they both drop, if they both hit, if the other hits, whatever. I have different forms and different tricks planned for that. Also based on my judging panel. I know some judges that prefer certain tricks that I do over other tricks that I do. So I've got probably 5 or 6 different versions of a given form that I come prepared with to Chicago, and then I kind of see which ones I need. And I always try to avoid using the hardest version until I need it.
Yeah.
Because most years I like to hold on to that until I get to around US Open. Because to me, my entire year is centered around winning the US Open.
And that, what's interesting, I remember, I'll never forget, you and I talked one time after a championship you should have won.
Oh, Lord.
I don't know if you remember this conversation. Do you remember this? I don't know if you remember this conversation.
Give me the year.
It was a diamond. It was a year you should have won. I'm not going to say what it was because it's going to put someone else down. And that's not fair. Right? So, and you told me, and you were like, and I went up and you and I locked eyes, and I'm like, man, you should have had it. And you were like, and you said, I added 3 new moves too. And you did. You added 3 new moves that were totally different. And that's lost in today's world a little bit to some extent, because I came from the one guy when I was competing the most that I never beat was Anthony Atkins. It was not the cleanest guy by any stretch, However, this dude would have a different form that he ran in the division, a new form in the runoff, and a totally different form that he would do in the finals.
Yeah.
And everything would be different.
Right.
And so that is it's lost a little bit, but you switched it up. You have them on the ready. Like you could just drop it like that.
Right.
Wow.
And that's the other thing that's important to remember is that a couple of things. Number one is that, in that moment I said that in frustration, I did 3 new things and it didn't work. What happened?
Oh, you weren't lying though.
And well, I wasn't lying, but in retrospect, I got to consider a couple of things. Number one, is it possible that I did those new things and those judges that knew my form either thought it was a mistake or thought that it was easier than the things that I'd been doing before, even if in reality I thought they were harder? Was the perception that was a downgraded form because it changed, right? And then the second thing is that one thing that I've learned, because some judges truly don't know the difference between what's the harder trick and what's not, and that's not their fault. It's just not their era. It's not the tricks that they saw when they were competing. So it's, how do you control that? But then the other part of it is sometimes, and this is something that a lot of kids need to understand, sometimes the outcome of a division is not based upon who runs the better tricks or even the better form. Sometimes whoever has the better moment is going to be the person that wins that division. So I think in that particular diamonds, I didn't go last. Somebody else, it was their moment. The moment felt right for them to win a diamond ring, and so they did. And I've had times where I've benefited from the moment, and I've had times like that where the moment hasn't been mine. And that's something that at the major tournaments, at your Warrior Cups, at your US Opens, at your Diamonds, sometimes it comes down to the moment. And so what I've realized going forward is, since that year happened, one thing that I've started to do is, instead of just strategizing based on the moves in my form, also going from the music, from the layout of the form, trying to create those moments such that more often than not, it's my moment, quote unquote, than it is somebody else's.
Right.
Okay, I got a question I didn't think I was going to ask, but now I want to ask it.
Scared.
Have you, going off of what you just said, can you think of a time where you either thought you were going to lose, or maybe you thought you should have, but you won? Can you think of it?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
What was it?
It happens to everybody. Like the first one that comes to mind is I thought that the first form that I ran on Paul Mitchell was atrocious. because I remember so I have a really unique story of how I got on Paul Mitchell. I got on Paul Mitchell like an hour before I competed at US Open, which is like unheard of.
Wild.
Yeah.
That morning. So I was like wigging out because for 6 years, that was the only thing I wanted was to be on the team. And so now I'm on the team and I've got to compete in like 45 minutes and I'm freaking out. Right. So that first form that I ran, I think I stumbled twice. I felt slow. I was nervous. The whole executive team was watching me. I felt like crap, but it was my first form on Paul Mitchell and, I won anyway. You know what I mean? So,
Wow.
that was, but it was just a division. So it wasn't like there was a whole lot on the line. The next division, I felt fine. I ran a good form. I won that division too. So in the grand scheme of things, that didn't matter that much.
See, now wait a minute. That's spoken like there's people who can't recognize with what you just said. You just said that's just a division. There wasn't a whole lot on the line. There are people listening that have won a handful of divisions in their career. And when you said, it was just a division, there wasn't a lot on the line, their jaws just hit the floor as soon as you said that. That's not anything. You didn't say anything wrong. That's the thing. You didn't say anything wrong.
That's also the mentality that you
just says the level of where we're at. And there's just certain people. Once you get to that level, there's another one. And you're at that one looking down. That's not your fault. That's just the level you're at.
Thank you. And to clarify that, I realized that the way that I worded it, it might have sounded like, well, it was my first tournament on Paul Mitchell, so I won because of that. That's not what I meant. The way that I should have worded that was, despite the fact that I stumbled, it was still apparently better than the other people in the division in the eyes of the judges, and therefore I won. I don't think that I won. I don't think the judges gave me the win because I got on Paul Mitchell. I don't think that happens. I think that actually a lot of people think that there's a Paul Mitchell bias. I think there's a bias against Paul Mitchell oftentimes in forms and weapons.
I think so.
Because a lot of judges want to see us lose. A lot of judges get tired of Paul Mitchell.
That's a good
so
point.
many forms and weapons.
Yeah. I see that a lot too. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and it gets like that no matter what. I mean, it's funny because you'll see someone win the first 6, 7 tournaments of the season and then will lose the last 4. No matter what.
Yeah.
I mean, you'll see that. Now, some of that will depend on, hey, they were pumped up and then they didn't adapt and didn't finish well. But also some of it is, hey, you're being looked at harsher now, right? So you got to live up to that level. But I mean, I don't think it's biased or bad judging or anything like that. It's just you put yourself at that top. It's harder to stay up there than to get there, So that's just the way it is. If you want to be number one, to be the man, you got to beat the man, right? So it's and to be the man, you got to keep being the man. So that's harder in a lot of ways. So.
Because at that point, a lot of judges start, and I've heard judges tell me this before, judges start comparing you to past
yourself
instead of comparing you to who you're competing against.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, oh, that wasn't your best. That wasn't your best, Jackson. That wasn't your best.
Which is frustrating.
It's that way.
Competitor, but I also get it. You know what I mean? Like if I go out there and I don't compete up to my standard, then I see why I deserve a loss. But at the same time, it's
no, you don't deserve a loss. If you want to say you deserve a lower score, that would be fair. But that doesn't mean their score gets to go higher.
Yeah,
if you're better than them, their score's still lower.
Yeah, but Alex, they don't score right now. They just rank you. They rank you. They don't score you. So. Yeah, so that's the difference.
When they do what Alex was saying, and they give you a lower score because it wasn't your best, but it is relative ranking, and so you wind up losing.
Oh, I know. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, but they're not actually allowed to do. They're not supposed to do that. You know what I mean? Like they're supposed to be ranking you. That's the way the NASCAR system is set up.
Right.
So, and I always have a hard time with that too because when I would sit and judge in NASCAR tournaments. I would see people just down. So, oh no, he can't win. He bobbled once. And I'm sitting there, but this person never did a chamber correctly the whole time. Yeah, but he didn't bobble. Well, he didn't do his actual technique correct. Like that bothers me so much.
This whole form was a bobble.
Yeah, or they're looking down the whole time, and you're like, I'm like, didn't you notice that stuff? And I just feel like they only look for the big mistakes instead of the actual structure of the form and everything. And I think a lot of that, what we really need is more of a system a platform for people to go to and see what is right, what is wrong, where it should go, what is created. I mean, we don't want to get so structured like gymnastics to where people already know our form before they do it. I don't like that. That's the one thing I don't like watching gymnastics is that, they were supposed to do a triple and they only did a double. Man, you don't know my form. Like, I don't like that. Right. But we may have to get to that point to become at that,
We're approaching with U.S. Open. I don't know if you guys know this, but I'll give you guys behind the scenes of current.
Yeah, tell me.
So now before you compete in a U.S. Open, you actually have to type out exactly what tricks you're planning to do in your form before you do it so that the commentators can commentate about the tricks properly.
Wow. Okay.
Now, me personally, I always write that in very general terms. You know what I mean? Like, all right, I'm going to do a variation of this multiple spin trick, or I'm going to do a variation of this catch up.
Right.
So that way I'm not,
Jackson,
locked in one particular set of tricks. But
I got a great thing for you. Here's what you do. You should do this. This U.S. Open, you make it there. This is what you do. You just make up a bunch of words. You just make up names.
Well, no.
See, at this point, he's going to do the hoogly diggly. and make him say it too. Write it down a bunch of times. Like it's a real thing.
Was because it became a meme at U.S. Open that at the beginning of every single competitor's form, you were going to hear the line, big opening move.
Yeah.
Like the reason that became a thing was because the commentary got too repetitive. So I'm all for trying to make the commentary better.
Yeah. Well, and I had let's see, it was 2000. It was either 14 or 15. I don't remember what it was when they did I think this was the first traditional grand that they did, and ended up being Jared and myself and Damian Marquez from Mexico. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't know this till after the fact, but all my family's watching it live, and the only thing that happens is my chat saying, "Oh, he did a high kick. He's kind of making up this traditional form right here."
No.
And he's doing, you're not supposed to do high kicks in traditional, but they allow you to do this.
So he's just dogging you.
And so he's dogging me. And the thing is, and again, like you said, should it matter or not? No, but my whole point of like doing Korean for those 3 years was to do a traditional Korean form that was the way it was taught in the open circuit and beat people who were doing made up ones. I was trying to do that for Korean, which, had been happening for Japanese at that time, right? And so that just bothered me like so much. I'm like, what are you talking about, man? Like, so the whole time the forums, like you could have said so many things, like, the last time that they did the first time they did a traditional grand, or the last time they did was 99 and I won it as a junior, and you could have told so many more stories for that. So I get what you're saying with there's ways we can improve the commentary, even if sometimes we have to do things we don't necessarily like, but that's just part of moving forward, there's so many things that we may have to do which seem out of our comfort zone right now if we want to go to the next level.
Right. And the other thing that they're starting to do is they're starting to like make an effort to create storylines at U.S. Open.
Yes.
Is valuable because that's what every other professional sport does. The storyline of Kawhi Leonard coming to L.A. and then his first game against the Raptors. The storyline of there now being two Kings in L.A. and LeBron James playing Kawhi Leonard and Clippers Lakers, right? Storylines define sports. Thing that they did at U.S. Open this year was they covered the Presley family, they covered myself, and they covered Mackenzie Emery, and they actually made storylines out of each of us. And I still think that has some perfecting to do. For example, I think that there was a situation where, I was very fortunate to have like a 2 or 3 minute spot of like my interview and some of my story before the men's weapons division, but one of the men's weapons competitors' forms actually got cut from the broadcast. And so it's like, maybe a little bit less of my story and make sure we get every competitor featured.
Right.
But at the same time, it's a step in the right direction because development of storylines is essential to getting somebody that knows nothing about martial arts wanting to watch what happens.
Right.
So on that, and then we're going to segue and decide. Yeah, we're going to segue into something. But wait, I want to ask this though: is the U.S. Open your favorite tournament?
I don't like saying my favorite tournament because I have different favorite tournaments for different reasons. You know what I mean? But I will say,
So let it out.
this U.S. Open feels the feeling of a U.S. Open is special to me. Like when I walk into Coronado Springs, that is a completely different place than anywhere else that I reach competitively.
That
And like
that is true.
most of me will tell you, in the 48 hours of U.S. Open, I'm a different human being. I don't talk to people as much. I close myself off. I typically train until about midnight on Friday night, preparing my form for Saturday. I take U.S. Open extremely seriously. So U.S. Open, I'm in my zone. U.S. Open is the tournament that I train for. But at the same time, like Warrior Cup, I love for a different reason. Like Warrior Cup, the first Warrior Cup I went to was when it was the Warrior Cup Bluegrass Nationals right after Master Eubanks passed away. And that was being held in Louisville. So Warrior Cup has always felt like my home tournament. Being from Kentucky, even now it's held in Chicago, Warrior Cup has always felt like home. So it's my favorite tournament for a completely different reason than why I love the U.S. Open. But without a doubt, the three majors mean the most to me because the three majors is what I focus my career on, is trying to accumulate as many of those as possible because I said earlier, I modeled my career after Kalman. That's what Kalman did. Kalman stacked up Warrior Cups and U.S. Opens and Diamond Rings. So my goal is if I stack up as many of those as I can, then I got to be doing something right.
Yeah. Cool. Cool, man.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
All right. That's your triple crown. So if you're going to say, I like how you tripled it. That's it.
Oh yeah. For forms and weapons, those are the three tournaments to win. Getting yourself a Warrior Cup, getting yourself U.S. Opens, and getting yourself Diamond Rings. Those are the ones to win.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that one.
Yeah.
But I like that little snippet that you dropped about the Kings in L.A.
All right, go ahead. Let's do that.
So,
then we'll go into our next thing.
Jeff hates two things. Jeff hates team forms, and Jeff hates basketball.
Why do you hate team forms? We got to get into that.
That's what I'm saying. Why do you?
I don't hate No, I hate doing team forms. Okay, like.
Oh. Okay.
All right, I make up my forms on the spot. All right, so
he has a reason.
If
you were dealt a raw hand in team forms. That's
I
what
did.
It was.
I did several times deal wrong hand. Yeah, I mean, I had some.
You got dealt a raw hand.
Yeah. Now I am working on wanting to do a team form with several of my students this year, and I'm excited about that. But I'm warning them that it could be painful to deal with me. So, but yeah. But anyway.
Who do you do team forms with, Jackson?
Yeah, who are you going to do this year? Jake still?
Jake Presley still. Yeah.
All right.
That's
awesome. You guys going to win it all? So, AKA, are you guys doing it?
Jake's coming off an injury, so I'm not certain if we're doing it at AKA. But if we're doing sync, my expectation is that we win. So, and that's how I go in that division. Every time I step on the mat, my goal is to win that division, or my expectation is to win that division. So.
Word. All right. Okay. So you brought something up in your very first podcast. The Jackson Rudolph podcast is entertaining, by the way. I like it a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.
The very first one, I was glued. I was messaging. You couldn't get the thing to load. I'm not even kidding you. Like, I was blowing Jackson up as I'm listening to it. Probably hit him with like 50 messages, right? But the main topic of the first one was, what if point fighters were NBA players? The weird part about that conversation is, for probably 15 years, I've had that conversation with Hamid Feruzzi, and then since later I've had it with Ross Cook. You didn't ever tell anybody about that. And I've said, oh, what if this person was this person? What if this person? Now, if they were an NBA player, they'd be that person. Right. All of your takes, because you had a few of them, you probably had like a half a dozen of them.
Probably right? 10, I think, yeah.
Yeah, they were all wrong. Every single one of them. Every single last one of them was wrong.
Well, I think because in our conversations, you told me some of yours, and if you want to get into that right now, we can. I think
I do.
I think we're coming from two different places, because to me, I was considering more of like the style of play, and B, the overall impact that player has on the sport, like the position that player had within the sport, which is why, like, for me saying Michael Jordan, Raymond Daniels, personality wise, Raymond Daniels may be more like Kobe Bryant, being the Southern California kid, that type of thing. However,
He's Kobe. He's Kobe.
Like, the place that Raymond holds in sport karate history, though, is being the point fighting GOAT, which is Michael Jordan to basketball.
No, nah, because here's the thing.
Yes,
I'm of the few truth tellers that knows LeBron is the greatest ever.
Oh, God. All right, let's see. This is why I don't want to get in basketball conversation.
I have LeBron in 2. I have LeBron as the second greatest basketball player of all time. However,
that's right. You're almost there.
I can't get over the 2011 finals.
You go ahead, can't get over it. You know what? That's because Jordan is 6 for 6. Here's the thing: Jordan's 6 for 6. He is, and played 15 years. What happened to those other 9? Well, you couldn't make it. You couldn't even make it. Just couldn't get there, huh? Couldn't get there.
LeBron couldn't get there last year. If we're talking about longevity, LeBron didn't look great last year.
No, he didn't.
Oh, man.
All right. So let's go over a couple.
Name a couple of them. Yeah.
So you had Ray. I understand why. I do get the one. I do get a little bit. I do get what you say. All right, Raymond, MJ,
to
go.
Yeah.
I understand your reasoning. That one I get. Cam is not Shaq. Cam Dawson is not Shaq.
Who you got for Cam?
I agree with you on that one. Yeah, I agree with you.
There is no Shaq. There's no Shaq. There's a few people that there just is none of. There's no Shaq. There's no MJ, even though I understand it. All right? Just can't be. Shaquille O'Neal is one of the largest humans ever. Right? This man, if you ever see this guy live in person, it looks like a wall just got up and starts moving.
Right, but again, I'm talking about style of play, right?
Yeah.
So the way that Shaq played basketball.
So you want to know who he is? I'll tell you who he is.
Go ahead.
He's Kevin Garnett.
Go on. I can
Kevin Garnett. Kevin Garnett is by far one of the most intense basketball players. If people know, just watch. Nobody's YouTube's previous like NBA games or sports games. I do that sometimes, but this dude is extremely intense. He punches teammates.
I'm a Celtics fan. I know how intense KG was.
All right. Yeah. I'm a Minnesota boy, so obviously I know. All right. Cam is KG. The biggest, yeah. Okay. Results.
But I don't think that Cam fights at the same intensity level that KG played basketball with. If we're going to talk about intensity level, one of the most intense fighters of all time was Damon Gilbert.
There you go. See, I was going to say that.
Well, no.
But I'll get into that later.
The Damon Gilbert one, there is one for Damon Gilbert.
Okay.
Is Draymond Green.
You're saying because of the late hits.
But Damon.
No, because Damon has also said this. Damon's been accused of hitting late, and he's even talked about it. And he's said, "I didn't hit late." The judges said, "Stop too early." So he's admitted he plays on that line. It's right there. Ain't nobody play on the line of getting kicked out of a game more than Draymond Green. It's right there, and they're both intense. Yes.
I see that. But I don't see Cam as particularly intense, though.
Yeah.
I do. I do because his techniques hurt. They hurt. They actually.
Do you think that an elbow check Shaq would hurt?
Yeah, exactly. I agree with you on this.
But that's what I'm trying to explain. That there's no comparable fighter to Shaq.
The reason for the Shaq comparison was because the way that Shaq played basketball is he would get in the paint and he would physically dominate you. And when I watch Cam fight other heavyweights, I watch Cam physically dominate other fighters. There are some fighters that cannot overcome how physically strong Cam is. And so that's why.
See that face, Jackson? That's him realizing he's wrong, but he doesn't. He's trying to figure out how to make
but you could say that about a lot of top centers.
Yeah. So,
You can
no,
say
you
that
can't.
a lot, but let's get into some
All
of
right.
the biggest one. I'd say
All right,
Zolt.
biggest one.
You said Zolt was, what'd you say, Tim Duncan?
Tim Duncan.
Tim Duncan was the big fundamental, okay? This dude did everything right? The only thing where they're both similar in is they don't talk, okay? That's it. You got them lost at that point, right? That's it. Really, Zolt is James Harden. Zolt is James Harden because no two players in both of their sports have been bailed out by refs more than those two people.
Oh, man.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So number one.
No, I'm not wrong. You
Okay,
can't guard James Harden. You have to. He's shot more free throws in his career than has attempted field goals. Guy puts up 60 points a game and has shot more free throws? Look at that. What's that saying? They're giving. You can't even play normal defense. You can't stand in front of him. They're going to call a foul. All right? So refs are just giving him stuff. All you have to be able to do is hit free throws in an open shot. Just like elementary school basketball. Now with Zolt, they change rules. They'll change brackets. It's not his fault. It's not his fault. I'm not dogging him. It's the way they're officiated.
So two things. Number one, I'm going to start with this. Zolt's my boy, right? So Zolt,
Well, yeah.
in the majority of my time on Paul Mitchell, Zolt was our anchor fighter. Zolt was the leader of our team.
Yeah.
You know, Zolt got on the team 6 months after I did. So like, if I was on the team, Zolt was on the team for the vast majority of my Paul Mitchell career. So obviously I have a little bit of Zolt bias and I hold Zolt in higher regard than most do because of how well I know Zolt and the greatness that I saw. I had a front row seat for, literally standing behind Damon's chair for the majority of Zolt's fights while he was on the team, right? So there's the first thing. I admit that I have bias. But the other thing is, the Tim Duncan comparison to Zolt is rooted in the demeanor, but also the fact that I believe that Zolt had two things. I think that he had very good overall point fighting fundamentals, and I also believe that when I watched Zolt fight, I almost never saw Zolt make mistakes. Like, if you scored on Zolt, most people earned points against Zolt. Zolt didn't just mess up and, like, take a D side or mess up and get caught on a blitz, right? Like, you had to earn your points against Zolt because of his leg. His leg gave him incredible defense, right? And also, when I talk about the point fighting fundamentals, his technical kicking ability was second to almost none. If you look at the later stages of career before the neck injury, the later stage of the career before he got hurt, he developed a very effective blitz. When he beat Ray for the last time at Irish Open, it was with his blitz. It was not with his leg. So, watching Zolt.
Well, he shouldn't have beat Ray that one, but all right.
That I agree.
Yeah.
There were controversial calls in that one. However,
he won.
the rate throughout that entire bracket, Zolt was winning fights with his blitz, whereas historically he had always won exclusively with his leg. And so that's where I get the Zolt Tim Duncan.
Cool.
But see, me saying he's James Harden doesn't like dogging him. You know, but just look at the different types of players.
I mean,
Tim
it
Duncan.
is.
Do you know this case because we mentioned these two players? You know that Tim Duncan has a worse free throw shooting percentage than Shaq.
I did not.
That don't sound. That is not sound like a Zolt Maradi, does it?
That does not. I agree with you.
And you ever seen Tim Duncan take 2 free throws in his career or 2 3-pointers in his career?
No.
No. And Zolt is a long range fighter. He wants a long range. Then he'll work you in long.
So if you're
of
going
course.
to go with the comparison of kicking is the equivalent of 3-pointers,
Right.
see that.
Of course.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
All right. I like that. And we got to see different perspectives on how you look at it. So I like it. Let's go into, can we go ahead and go into competitor of the weeks now?
Because you hate basketball that much.
I do. I hate basketball. But I like that combo.
So
no, I like
great.
it. I just, I like Jackson's
All
take
right,
on
we
it.
can move
You
on past
just
this one.
yap too much, you're
All right. But I do want to ask Jackson a little bit about this NBA season. We'll move on past that.
Yeah.
But hey, what do you like about this NBA season right now? What do you got? Because you mentioned the 2 Kings in LA. What do you think about that?
I think the Clippers are the better basketball team. They have better chemistry.
Wow,
They
you're so
everything.
wrong again.
However, if I'm putting money on who's winning the finals, I'm taking the Lakers
Who do you think they're
because
gonna? Who do you think they're gonna meet in the finals?
they have two more physically dominant players than the Clippers. And I think that at the end of the day, making the finals comes down to who has the more dominant players. And I think the Lakers have the more dominant players, despite the fact that the Clippers had the better basketball team. And I think they meet the Celtics in the finals. Again, I'm a Celtics fan, so I have that bias. But the way that the Celtics are playing right now, the team basketball the Celtics are playing, as effective as Enes Kanter has been in the paint, which the Celtics have not had in previous years, with the way that Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are playing once again. I think the Celtics are coming out of the East. I think we'll have a Celtics Lakers just like we did back in the late 2000s.
You think they could beat the Bucks?
I think so because the Bucks only have one player. They have
No, they
Giannis.
do not.
Their second
They got
best player is Chris
they got
Middleton.
shooters all over. They got shooters all over the place. They got Wes Matthews. They got DiVincenzo. That dude comes off the bench. He strokes
If you
threes.
put
Eric Bledsoe.
the 3-point contest, Jason Tatum's winning.
Well, that don't matter. How much explain that? Kevin Love is a 3-point shooting contest winner. That's how much that don't matter.
Look at the positional matchups, right? You say Eric Bledsoe, I'll take Kemba Walker over Eric Bledsoe any day. I'll take Jaylen Brown over Chris Middleton any day. I'll take Giannis over Jason Tatum, obviously. But if you look at the rest of I'm going to take Enes Kanter over Brook Lopez.
Oh, wow. You might be wrong with that one.
That one's closer than the other.
Enes Kanter's defense is like a revolving door, man.
Who even comes off the bench for the Bucks? The Celtics have Gordon Hayward.
They got a lot. They got Robin Lopez coming off the bench for the Bucks.
Robin Lopez averages like 7 points a game.
As he should. His twin yet bigger brother. He's the one. He's the better center. That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, and you're a Stanford guy.
I am at Stanford currently. This is a Stanford dorm in all of its glory.
Awesome, man.
That's good. Well, we're gonna go on and on about how much more correct I am than you, but we'll move on to the next topic. Okay. Let's go to our competitors of the week.
Yes, this is a fun one.
All right,
I'll start first
on this?
I'll
go
start.
for it.
All right, so mine is Damon Gilbert. So it's kind of funny. I was going to talk about him anyway, and then it works, that one of, fellow teammate is here as we're interviewing him. So it's pretty cool. Damon Gilbert, man, I remember never meeting him, but just seeing him in the magazine and being like, wait a minute, this guy's a super heavyweight and this dude is ripped and shredded like this. It's insane. This guy's insane. And then I was actually afraid of him. So,
he's intimidating.
I think we talked about this before too, is, Brian Plimple and Damon Gilbert had this intense rivalry, in the, late 90s to early 2000s. So intense that they were getting brawls and stuff, and they were in the same division, and it was just a big thing. And Brian Plimple was one of my best friends in sport karate. And so when Damon came on the team, I was like, man, I don't know about this. I don't know. I don't know if I like this guy. He's not friends with Brian, whatever. And then, man, once I met Damon, we were like boys. It was just so funny. And we actually became roommates for, I guess, from 2002 to 2005 or whatever. And it was always Damon and I. He kept me out of trouble as a young 18-year-old growing up. And became one of my best friends and like an uncle. I called him Uncle Damon. One of my favorite fighters because the intensity, again, that was something that I liked. When people watched like our team and it was Trevor, Damon, Jason, or whoever, Jason and Damon, not many of them made too many mistakes. So whoever could be a third with them, right? And it was really like that for a while. And it was just cool to see Damon be able to do that. So many times where I'd be like, whoa, like he had to go over the edge a little bit. I remember where he hit Raymond at Ocean State about 10 times after the break. But he got everybody pumped up, man. It was cool to be on a team with Damon because it was just exciting, right? And I think right now what's funny is that we've had so many conversations over these podcasts and different things, and his name doesn't get brought up like it should as one of the best heavyweight fighters ever. He dominated the NBL for years, beat 1 overall grands and stuff at Super Grands back then against like Mike Pombero and different people that were the top back then. Then he came over to NASCA and won both at the same time. He won internationally. He became a great leader. He was part of several of the most dominant teams, not just one or two, and so
That's true.
Really just respect him. Sometimes, I think he gets a little intense and needs to calm down, but, don't we all? We all have moments like that. And for me, it's just like, man, he has that passion for it, and you gotta love that and respect that. So, Uncle Damon.
I first saw Damon compete. I think it was '94, and I remember I saw him, and he didn't win the fight. I remember the fight, and he fought Anthony Price. Anthony Price beat him, and I just remember thinking at that time, speaking of intimidating fighters, Anthony Price.
Right.
My goodness. Right? So I just remember thinking at the time, because I didn't know who the heck he was. I'm like, that guy's all right. That guy's pretty good. Fast forward a couple of years later, and he becomes, like you mentioned, on one of the most dominant teams. Like when you say, what's the best three-man team ever? You're going to there's going to be an opinion one way or the other, but you will talk about the CJB team that he was a part of. So, and he and I never knew him like you just described. And I don't think I'll ever know him like you described. And here's the reason why. All right? Because first, I was not a teammate. I was always a competitor, and he's intense. He's not going to let you into that zone. Correct. If you're a competitor, or then fast forward later, he's coaching people that are competing against you. He's not going to open up that door. So while I'll probably never know him like that, I respect that about him. I can't do that personally. I can't. For me, I'm right here. You see my sleeves? It's all right here. All right. I don't know how to be anything different, but I respect people that hold it back like that. I really do.
There's a story that we tell on the team that the coaches still tell to this day that gets at that intensity that Damon has. And it's, I believe it was back when the team used to go to Austria, for the Austrian Open over there. And there was I don't remember who it was we were fighting. Yeah, I don't remember who it was we were fighting, but something happened where there were some late hits, and then the coach of the opposing team wound up grabbing the Paul Mitchell fighter and kind of pushing the Paul Mitchell fighter back into the ring, at which point Damon erupts across the ring yelling, "Don't touch my fighter! Don't you ever touch my fighter!" And apparently it was like the scariest moment that anybody had ever been a part of when Damon got that angry at somebody. But like Jeff was saying, I mean, it shows Damon's passion for the sport. Like I remember the first time that I ever watched Damon fight was the 2008 final at New England when he fought Raymond, and he beat Raymond in that fight. But I remember before that fight ever happened, they were on like the musical forms division before that fight was up, and you just heard this yell coming from the back of the room, and it was Damon warming up for that fight. You know what I mean? And then Damon went out there and won a close fight over Raymond. And the other thing I want to say about Damon is I feel like he often doesn't get enough credit. He always gets credit for his intensity. He doesn't often get enough credit for his strategy as a coach. Yeah. He does an excellent job of selecting matchups, and unconventional matchups that people wouldn't expect. Several fights against All-Stars where he put J.O. or lightweight against Raymond, their heavyweight, and J.O. would win some of those matchups. Damon was excellent, always has been excellent at selecting unconventional matchups that throw the other coach off and give Paul Mitchell a bit of an edge in a team fight.
Right. And a lot of that comes from being around different coaches and stuff throughout in his competitive career. You know, like he learned a lot from Conroy, you know, and being on Bay Area's best at that time in the 90s was like the thing. And just man, 3 or 4 of my favorite rivalries in sport karate had Damon in it. You know, it's like Damon and Brian Purple.
He's really easy to rival with.
Damon and Ray Wizard was just insane, and that they're in the same, you know, all of us got the same state, and it was just insane. I mean, you just hear stories about the fights that Bay Area's Best and Sherman Oaks Raiders had, and they're scary. So, yeah.
He is an easy guy to rival with. He's an easy guy to want to, all right, we got to amp things up and take it to the next level.
Yeah. Awesome.
All right.
All right.
Jackson,
you go.
You jump in on this, man. Who's your competitor of the week?
My competitor of the week is the newest member of Team Paul Mitchell's 33-year legacy, Alex Mancias.
Alex is to you, Alex. And claps.
Yes. Congrats.
Welcome to the family, Alex. We're proud to have you. And Alex is someone that was recruited by Coach Damon. He's a fighting prospect. He's been very successful in the juniors on NASCA point fighting for several years now. So he's going to add some depth to our fighting. But he's also a very good forms and weapons competitor. Won the weapons overall this year at the U.S. Capitol Classics, which also, by the way, every overall this year at U.S. Capitol Classics was also an ISKA American Championship. So Alex in one division won both the overall Granite Cap Classics and the ISKA American Championship. So he's got a win under his belt in the weapons as well. So he'll be a valuable tool for us once he moves up into adults competing in the creative bladed division to complement me in the non-bladed division. Obviously we've got other guys too. We've got Cole Presley as well, things like that. But everybody's getting older. So Alex will be a good young guy to help give us some more depth.
Cole's like 20, man. Cole's like 20.
Old. And I say that in reference to me as well. Myself, Reed, Cole, in sport karate years, you know, with life. I mean, Reed's got a full-time job now. I'm going to be going to med school eventually. That type of thing.
True.
How old is Alex?
Alex is 17 or 18. He's 17 going on 18.
So this is either his last year as a junior or sometime this year. He's up.
That's the thing. I don't know what the birthday cutoff is. I don't know if he has one more year left in juniors, or I don't know if he comes straight to adult. I'm not sure.
Yeah. What's the plan? Is it for him to have a big year as a junior this year, moving up into adults, or going straight up to adults?
To me, this seems, as far as from the fighting standpoint, this reminds me of a move that Damon made several years ago when we picked up DeAndre Walker. Mm-hmm. When we picked up DeAndre Walker as one of Damon's guys that Damon wanted to kind of teach to be a great fighter. And I think it's one of those situations where Damon wants to take Alex under his wing and try to bring the most potential out of Alex that he can. But I haven't talked to Damon about it. I don't know specifics on what the plan is or what division we expect him to compete in, that type of thing. And he's already shown a lot of promise in the juniors. So, I do expect him to have some output from the beginning.
What's he better at? Is he better at his forms of weapons or fighting? Which one's he better at?
He's had more success in fighting.
Yeah.
A lot of that's because,
even though he won an overall at Caps.
Right, but he's also competing in the same division as Jake Presley. So,
yeah,
anybody competing in the same division as Jake's gonna have a tough time. Jake's a beast.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
True.
When is he debuting in Chicago?
I assume so.
All right. Well, we'll see him there.
Yeah, man.
My competitor of the week is Chance Turner. Who's also connected to what we've been talking about, because Chance Turner, also from Texas, who was a Gypsy teammate of Alex's. Chance is someone who I look at a few competitors, and I look at just the talent level that they have, and Chance is just up there with just raw physical talent. Yeah. And I've talked to Chance, and I've talked to him like, bro, with just your raw physical talent, that dude's a freaking athlete too. Like, with just his raw athletic ability, he shouldn't lose. He really should not. If you looked at just everybody's just raw physical talents and abilities, if you looked at all the fighters and you said, all right, this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, and you looked at him, you would be like, yeah, that guy doesn't ever lose. You would just think that. All right. If you just saw their athletic ability, that's just what it's like. He's one of the streakiest, I would almost say sometimes scariest fighters, not like actual like fear, but just to fight, just because you literally have no freaking clue what he's going to do.
Correct. It's crazy.
And
he's able to do anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what's wild is he's able to do anything. And the thing that you least see coming is a quick, short textbook technique. Like if you just saw him just throw just a straight, just extended body punch, just offensive body punch, there's no extra spice on it, just bang. That might be the thing that you least saw coming, But if you're like, yeah, this dude's going to try a butterfly twist kick, you'd be like, okay.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's crazy. But I knew it was happening at some point. That was a possibility. You know what I mean? And the dude, he'll just knock people out. Like sometimes he just don't care. And I like that because I want to see highlight stuff. I like seeing that. I recognize with things like that and other fighters like that, I don't want to drop other names because let them have their time. And we're not talking about them right now. We're talking about Chance. He's very streaky. I was a very streaky competitor, right? I would be hot one weekend and the next weekend I would be not. And it would just be like that. And I think there was like 1 year where I would win my division, lose second fight, win my division, lose second fight. It was just like that. Like, can I get a break here? Couldn't string anything together. I don't know if Chance has ever been like that, but he's had times where, he did this because he's got a certain amount of, we used this term before, badassery to him where he's fighting Ray and he blitzes Ray. They probably clash together and then he shoves him through like, I don't know, like the little barricade and shoves him through that and down and out of the ring. And everybody knew like, oh man, you just done did it now. You poked the bear, and yeah, that started but he didn't back down though. He definitely didn't win that. He didn't win that. Ray won that. But he set the tone like, this is what we're going to do now. And I don't know if he knows another way other than badassery. So
yeah,
that's the dude. You know what I mean?
That's him.
Yeah.
That's him. Yeah,
I've always liked watching Chance fight.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, he also did one of the most athletic things that I've ever seen somebody do with a bow. I remember at Lone Star Open several years ago, we ran a bow for him, and he did this move where he would, he held both hands palm down on his bow, and he took a running start, and he actually jumped, tucked his legs up, jumped over his own bow, and then kind of kicked out of it and spun out of it.
That is cool.
Great athletic things that I've seen with a bow.
Like, what the heck is that? Like, what? When you said that, my brain hurt. Like, what? Like, people do this?
Funny.
Like, that's a human person? They make you like that?
Yeah, man. It's crazy.
And speaking, you said Lone Star. He's a promoter of a tournament, right?
He has a
Open.
tournament. Yeah, he has a tournament in April. Usually it's April because it always falls on the same weekend as mine the past few years. It's a TKO event. So
what is that?
Texas Karate Organization. It's a growing league. Actually, the past 4 or 5 years, been really growing in Texas. So
a lot of really strong competitors down there too.
Yeah. Texas is very. See, Texas and the NBL has always been that's where a lot of this stuff was. Everyone respects Texas big time on the NBL, but on NASCAR people don't see it as much. Never really have seen as many Texas competitors until recently. Until the past 5 to 10 years, really, a lot of Texas competitors have really done more. So it's cool, man.
Well, Jeff, I want to ask you about this just before we get into the last segment.
Yeah.
So we talk a lot about NASCAR, NBL, and we're starting to get close to this a little bit.
Mhm.
What happened with Super Grands this year?
So
I don't know.
this
But
is my
if
first
anybody would
year.
know, you would know, even though you weren't there.
Yeah, this is my first year. I haven't been in 12 years. I decided to, just take the year off and not do it. Be myself and just kind of not travel on my birthday. But
Yeah. Jeff's birthday's on Christmas, Jackson.
Yeah.
So, that's unfortunate. Happy belated birthday, though.
Yeah. Thanks, man. So it was just, again, a lot of the pressure of being the so-called president when you really didn't really get the wheel. You know what I mean? It was kind of like I didn't really get to do the things that I wanted to do.
You were just the person people yelled at.
Right. So it was just more like I kind of I got to be someone else to pass the blame on. And some of the things, deserve. I mean, it's just different. It's not the same when you're taking it's like someone's baby and you're changing it and making it do something else. It's just, that's kind of the way it was. So
yeah, you were changing the diaper and then giving it right back to him. All you did was change diapers.
Right. So
you didn't get to do any of the fun stuff.
That kind of happened, and for me, I just got overwhelmed with all of that, and it wasn't fun for me, and I wanted to find the excitement again in the sport that I love, and do that. So like I took that year off from my tournament, probably taking another year off from my tournament. But as far as with Super Grands, the location, people were going to hate on it no matter what because it was still in New York, I think.
Yeah.
But actually, for most of the people that went there, they said it was like one of the best locations they've been because there was actually stuff to do around there. There were everything was walking distance, and there was 10 to 15 restaurants. There was 2 or 3
Where in New York was it?
So it's called Jamestown, New York. It's the home of Lucille Ball, right? So it's a small town, right? It's a small town, but it's become one of the meccas up there for their comedy center and everything like that. They have big comedy festivals and things because of the Lucille Ball Museum. So it's just, a different place, it's not
what about
stressful
the tournament?
or everything else. But the tournament, so I think because he figured the turnout was not going to be good, he moved it from the convention center to the YMCA during the day. And so, and then the finals was actually really cool. The finals setup was like a theater, right? And he had the finals and everyone could watch from the balconies and stuff, which is a cool thing, which is something that I think, which I think he's going to cut it back, hearing from everyone, he's going to cut it back to 3 days, which I think is a good idea, if he continues it. And do that. I don't know about, I think the fear he has of doing the convention center is that they have an ice skating rink there, and a lot of people just don't like competing on those types of places. I grew up competing at New England Open, and it was on an ice rink. And Super Grands in '99 was on an ice rink, and people really complained about that. So I don't know, what's going on there. I just think he needs to kind of cut back to move forward in some ways, if he wants to do it. And because again, it doesn't have to be the top tier thing. It can just be its own thing, and not compared to anything else. Because I do think the NBL provides something to schools, to different competitors that is important and that no other league does. So, and I think
you
that's
mentioned
important.
a couple things. You mentioned, number one, if he does it. What do you mean if he does it again? Is he toying around with not doing this again?
It was 30 years, you know what I mean? But I think he will. The city was really supporting him, and from what I'm hearing, giving him a grant to put it on and to bring people there. So I think
So you think he's going to be back there?
Yeah, he's not going to move it ever again because he's just dealt with that whole issue. I mean, let's be honest. Most people put on tournaments, they put it in their backyard. They don't go to change places every which way, right? Especially if you're one promoter doing it, correct? The only ones that do that are world organizations that, okay, so when it's in my country, the country president runs that event. That's your event. That's the way it is. So it's not really like that with the NBL. So it could be like that, but It's not currently. So
Should
I
it be?
think, I don't know. I don't know about that.
Oh.
Of most people that
I'm
really
asking the
understand, I
unofficial
know.
ambassador.
Yeah. What I'm saying is that as far as most people to like really understand what I probably do understand where boys comes from than most people because I've kind of dealt with it. But I also still think you have to, you got to change. So, and I've said that several times. So, but, most people though had fun, enjoyed it. They just, hope that the competition grows and
Were they
gets.
down? How many competitors did they have? Or were they
I have
down
no
to?
idea. It was down a lot. I don't even know the real number. So, and it's a hard thing too because you could say, oh, today I only saw 25 competitors there, but the next week, the next day, there could be a different, really logistically at Super Grands, there could be a different people at each day because some people don't show up till the end of the week and some people
Right.
leave when the other do. So really it's not like you're going to get everyone at once. I think that's something that people forget about with Super Grands. So they see that first day like nobody's here. Well, yeah, it's just team fighting and team forms. So only those people are going to be here and whoever needs to register. So.
And you hate one of those.
It's not team fighting. I love team fighting. But yeah, so as far as that, and that's just kind of, and I don't know if I even said anything with all that rant, but I think the biggest problem this year with that and what he was most disappointed from a couple of the parents that I've talked to was just that the promoters didn't come. And that was a big issue. And that's the only way it's going to grow is if the promoters support and bring competitors and do that, especially when they say their whole thing is to bring the NBL up. Well, the Super Grands is that the thing that represents the NBL the most. So that's what has to happen.
Okay.
So.
Well, let's hope it does. Let's hope something. I don't like seeing big things like that just dissolve.
No, I don't either. No.
So, all right, let's go into our final segment, which is should it stay or should it go? And we're going to talk about seeding. You are a seed. Should the seeding stay or go? Should we just go off of here are the current rankings? What should the seeding be? Jackson, let's ask you.
Yep.
You're a seed, okay?
A seeded competitor. He's not
You're a seeded competitor. Yeah, you're not a seed. Okay. You're a seeded competitor. Do you care about, I'm asking a few different questions on it. One, do you care? And do you think it should stay or should it go?
Two perspectives. Me personally, as a competitor, I could care less. Put me first in the division, put me last in the division. I believe that I can go out there and win regardless. So as a competitor, the competitor inside me says, I don't care. However, as someone who is a fan of the sport and as a spectator of the sport and as somebody who wants to see the sport continue to grow, I think that seeding offers two benefits. I think seeding needs to stay, and there's two reasons why. Number one, I think that seeding is an important part of early goal setting and paying dues for competitors on their way up. So like the process of traveling the circuit to get your name out there and accumulating points and, excuse me, I'm getting over the flu still, so excuse me. But the process of climbing that ladder and setting your sights, because and I still remember not being seated, but setting my sights on that fourth seated competitor and saying, okay, if I can place higher than that fourth place guy, then I'm ready to go, and then I'm ready to aim for the third place guy. Then I can aim for the second place guy. Then I can start winning the division. So having that goal setting and having that tangible thing that you can reach for and see your progress instead of it just being like, oh, I got fourth place. Instead, you're looking at it as, oh, I've achieved this position. You know what I mean? So I think that it's important.
It's a really good point.
Yeah. And I think it's also very important as far as strategically amongst the best of the best. For example, if you have a weapons division featuring myself, Reed Presley, and Cole Presley, it will be significantly more entertaining and more fair to the judging of the three of us if we are all going back to back to back, instead of you see Jackson and then you see 5 people that aren't as good, and then you see Reed, and then you see 3 people that aren't as good, and then you see Cole, right? The ability to see the best of the best go back to back in that division so that they can be more directly compared makes it easier to judge between them. And it also makes it more entertaining for spectators to see, here's one good guy, here's the next really good guy, and then here's the last really good guy. Which is also why I like the rule change that NASCAR had a few years ago, where they said we're going to keep the top 4 seeds, but we'll shuffle them so that way there's more parity amongst the top 4, and that way you're not getting the first seed always wins, the second seed always gets second, but you're mixing up the people that have earned their spot in that top 4 category, and they're being directly compared against one another.
You do bring up some good points, because before we brought this up, if you would have said it doesn't matter, I'd have been like, yeah, get it out of there. But you actually, because I've said those same things to people that I've coached with. I was like, you've got to crack the top 4. That's your goal. First, if you're just starting out competing, you want to get your name called in the top 8. Then you got to crack the top 4. Then see if you can get into the number 1 or number 2. If you can get, because if you can take second, that means you're good enough to win. Right. And we would just, you're right. There's levels to this. But don't you think that when you said, okay, because here, I'll phrase it this way. When you said, you see Reed, then you see a couple of competitors that aren't as good, and then you see Jackson, then you see a couple of competitors that aren't as good. I actually, in some ways, think that's more fair, because I've been a part of it. I've been a judge when I've had other judges next to me go, okay, now is when we start with the seeds. And I'm like, hey, you've already screwed the other guys beforehand. You just already mentally prepared that you're saving your best scores for now. Mm-hmm. Don't you think that a little bit?
I think that if somebody goes out there, I think it's an issue of judging at that point, not an issue of the seeds being there. You know what I mean? At that point, a judge able to look at the situation and say, okay, anybody in the division has a chance to win. My perspective is coming more from not the fact that those 5 people between Reed and I aren't very good. Statistically, it's more likely that they're not going to be good enough to win the division than it is that they are going to be good enough to contend for a win in that division. Absolutely, it's possible that they could be good enough, but statistically, more often than not, they're not going to be at the level of Reed and myself and Cole and others.
Right.
So I'm more so saying, for the sake of comparison between the competitors that have already proven that they have a chance to win that division, you want to be able to have a more fair comparison against them. And let's say that somebody truly does have the talent to win. Somebody's good enough to win. That should be noticed by any judge at the level to at least place in the top 4. And then once they start,
plus you judge everyone at the end. You judge everyone at the end now. So
so you're watching everybody.
You watch everyone. It's a little different.
Right.
That's
the other thing,
that's a good point.
If somebody is good enough to be winning, they'll at the very least get 4th. And so over the course of 3 or 4 tournaments, they'll move closer and closer to being compared against the people that are currently winning.
Right. So one of the things so for me, I've done both. I mean, I've been, when I was growing up in NASCAR, and there used to only be 1 seed, and then there was 2, and then it went to 4, and then I did NBL, where all the normal tournaments, you were working, you went to as many as you can, you were trying to win every one because you were trying to rack up a seed for that one tournament at the end of the year.
I like that idea.
So
I like
concept
that.
a lot of people really like. But I think Winston-Salem, one of the last 2 ones we did, we switched it to do because so many people, we got to watch them all and then do that. And a lot of people complain about that because they said, what was the point of working all year long to get the seed if that doesn't really matter? You know what I mean? And I understand that view. I understand that as well. So there's so many different ones on that. I actually like, again, I'm kind of going to the world thing where they do the whole division, and then the top 4 move on and do it again. Now you see those top 4 competing against each other on another day, and then they have to bring their A game against each other. Now, how could you do that in a regular tournament? You probably could. because you just do it right then. All right, now we're going to see them again. Level it up. They kind of tried that in NASCAR, or I think Battle of Atlanta did it. It was probably 10 years ago now, where they did. You ran the regular division, those 4 moved on, then they went against the top 4 seed or something like that.
That took forever.
And, yeah, but so it might, and I think some of that had to do because I don't think they had adjusted the whole new scoring system yet at that time either. So I think that they might have had ties and stuff which you don't have now, and so I think there's a way to get to it to where it's the most fair. We just have to work along on the way,
What would you guys think about this? This is an idea that I talked about with Reed maybe 6 months ago or so. So the idea was, it was based on the complaint that a lot of people are like, oh, well, we always see the same people on stage. Men's weapons is always the same group of people on stage.
Sorry, I'm so good. I hate that complaint.
Well,
yeah, I'll try to suck next time.
What if seeding didn't happen in divisions, but what if you had, let's take men's weapons for example. What if you had 3 people that were seeded into the men's CMX weapons grand, and then you ran off the divisions, and the people that were seeded in the grand didn't even compete in the divisions. And so all the others that are contenders, they all compete against each other. And the winner of those divisions gets to go into the final. So you're going to guaranteed new faces on stage as well as
your top people. Yeah.
I actually really like that.
Yeah.
But
so
how
it's
would you
good,
implement that? Would you do that by a tournament? Like, let's say we do that at, let's say, Compete Nationals. Sorry, Jeff hates it when I say that. Right? Let's say we do that. And would you say like 3 people, 4 people are already seated into this grand? Or are you saying like 1 person is seated and then it goes into this? How would you do that?
2 or 3. Because to be
that
just
are already
one,
seated, just sitting in there waiting. They don't compete in the division.
But what qualifies? I mean, so again,
Right,
you're based
off
last year's results for this year to start that way. And yeah, I mean.
You have to not do it for the first 2 or 3 tournaments. You have to have the first 3 tournaments of a season.
That kind of makes sense. Yeah.
Position.
Yeah.
I think the best way to do it, the best way to do that would be like, this sounds strange and funny. Do it like they did in the Karate Kid. Nah, you won this freaking tournament. You don't even have to compete until the grand. Yeah. And so that way,
they do that a lot of tournaments locally and stuff. So,
that way each tournament is special. So you might be the best, but you've never won Ocean State. You can't touch somebody for that.
Problem is that those competitors will only get. I mean, I guess Jackson right now doesn't care if he wins the creative weapons title or whatever. He wants to win the overall title, right?
Okay.
But what I'm saying, that kind of hinders that because you didn't actually compete in that division. How do you get points for that? So there are some little things you got to look at.
That's a good point.
As far as that. So, you'd have to put those in like a pro series level or something, like a different tier, but.
Right. I think that part of that original idea came from the whole excuse me again. Sorry. Came from the idea of, what if there was a way for sport martial artists to theoretically make more prize money?
Yeah.
In which case you have, instead of having $2,000 allocated to having a traditional weapons winner and a CMX weapons winner, then maybe what you do is you do, a couple $100 to whatever contender wins their way through the tournament and makes it to go up against the seeds, and then do
and
like
then
a
the
15
big money at the end. Yeah.
Exactly. Something like that.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. No, I get it, man. That's awesome.
But there is a way to do that if you just say, all right, if you're seeding for this and you're seeding, and if you get into enough points, you'll get to the top 4. Like if you just get,
there's ways to do it.
If the main goal is you win the tournament, then that gets you the ultimate seed to where the next year you don't even have to compete. You're already sitting there waiting. Wouldn't that be the ultimate?
I mean, they technically already do that. Like they do that at U.S. Open. At U.S. Open, the defending champion is guaranteed a spot in the Night of Champions.
That's what I mean. Exactly.
Yeah.
But I've been the defending champion at U.S. Open for 3 years now, and that doesn't stop me from competing in the daytime eliminations.
Right.
I still compete throughout the daytime at U.S. Open because I enjoy going out there and competing. You know what I mean? I could just show up to U.S. Open, not compete all day, and then go on stage this year because I'm the defending champion, but I'm not going to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, no,
Well,
and
what
I
do
get
you?
that. And
Maybe
even
other people.
the world championships like WKU and WKC, I think do that. I know WKU does, and WKA used to. If you were a gold medal, you automatically made the team the next year, and you're in there. And I think a lot of times,
When you went to the championships, you had to go through the process again.
right?
So for forms, there's a lot more conversation about it. For fighting, it's really, do I want it or not?
Yeah.
They're
Right.
really, and that's
Yeah.
really ultimately what it is. So many guys just say, I don't care.
Well,
And
because
they-
a lot of
and
them
they would
want a warm-up
try-
fight. So.
Want a warm up fight. I won't do you because you don't know what you're going to get. But then sometimes your warm up fight is, we just talked about Chance Turner. That's not a warm up.
Right.
That's not a warm up.
Correct.
All right. You just go home, you know? So, but then you look on the other side of the bracket and you got two cheeseburgers fighting each other and you're like, I could have had the winner of that. What?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
they got pink gear on and they got chest protectors and their nut cup on the outside.
Well, I think that if fighters universally used their seeds, I think it would be better for spectating fighting because theoretically, then you would have a higher chance of the best fighter and the second best fighter meeting in the final.
Right.
But then when
the
people
top
talk them
fighters
out of
don't
it, though.
seed.
So here's what happens, though, Jess. Is sometimes in the bracket, when they're setting up brackets, refs will go, all right, is anybody taking their seed? Because they look at the amount of people there, and they do the math in their head as to how they can set it up. But if some people are taking seeds and some people aren't, it messes with them. You
But
see what I'm saying?
how many top fighters really are registered NASCA?
They don't,
competitors?
not anymore.
They're not.
It used to be.
Yeah, it used to be, but it's not. And the big problem that used to happen in the late '90s, it's happened a lot, when people wouldn't turn their points in until like the last term of the year, and so like a Pedro Xavier wouldn't turn his points in, and he wouldn't use his seed, but then at the end of the year he was the number one fighter because he turned his points in the very last tournament. That was the way it was back then, and just he would be a NASCA competitor or whatever. And actually, at that time, most of the teams would pay for them to be a NASCA member, but some didn't.
It wasn't much.
Yeah, but it's now it's different.
Now
but
it's
I still like better of if you were number one in that division, you got your division free comped at that tournament, right? That was something that was cool. That was like, man, this really made me really. I got to be number one this tournament, so that way I at least get this. It's like working for a sponsorship in some way, right? And it gives you something to do. Almost better than going. I mean, going last pretty good, but you know what I'm saying? Like it's still it's helping you more. Like for me, I would rather take that than that because again, it's a competitor thing. I'm going to win anyway. Like I'm going to win, so it doesn't really matter.
That's how all adult divisions used to be on NASCA. All adult divisions, if you won your division, you got $100. So
you paid more than that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was another thing that was awesome too.
They split the grands and
Yeah. So imagine then you would get your division comped, and then you would get $100 for winning it. That was great. So, yep.
This is pretty good, though.
This is a good one.
This is a great one. Now, wait a second.
We can't end it.
Before we go,
Yeah.
congratulations is in order.
Yeah, man.
Our guy, a friend of the show, Jackson Rudolph, is an engaged man.
All right.
Hand claps to you, my friend. So, what is your fiance's name?
Gabrielle Dunn. Gabrielle Dunn is my fiance.
Now,
Awesome,
how
man.
long have you guys been dating?
Oh wow, unofficially it's been like 6 years, but we've been officially dating. Yeah.
I don't understand when people say unofficially and officially. What does that mean?
Well, Gabrielle and I were together when we were younger, when we were like 14 or 15. And then we broke up. And it's funny, the reason that we broke up was because I actually didn't think that she liked me anymore, because she like wouldn't hold my hand or anything. And so I was like convinced that she just like didn't like me. So I broke up with her. And then it turned out that she was actually just like super intimidated by me. And so that's why she wouldn't like hold my hand in public or anything. And so anyway,
Okay.
but yeah, we go way back to like high school and everything. So, I'm really excited about it. I proposed in Disney World, which is where she wanted it to be and everything. It was super cute, and we're excited about it. So, I'm super blessed, super happy, and she's the love of my life. So.
What does
Awesome,
the future
man.
hold for the two of you guys?
So she's actually headed off to Chile tomorrow. She's going to be competing in a WKF K1 event in Chile. So she's going down there to compete. She's a huge traditional form specialist. She's been training down in Miami with Robert Young for the past week.
Okay, so she's a
going
martial artist. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, she is. She can. Yeah. So she's on Team AKA, big traditionalist, like I said.
Yeah, she won
and she,
our main award.
Yeah,
for,
what am I talking
traditional
about?
forms.
Yeah,
Yeah.
never mind.
yeah. And then, as far as wedding goes, with me, I'm going to take a gap year, which is basically a year off from school where you work on your application, get everything ready to go to medical school, that type of thing.
Yeah.
So with getting the gap year and going to medical school, that type of thing, we'll probably get married in 2021, 2022, something like that. We'll figure it out. But yeah.
Cool, man. Awesome.
Good.
Congrats, bro.
Thank you very much.
It is a life change. It's a life-changing thing because you don't know anything other than you.
Right.
It's about to be nothing about you. But yeah, that's everything that you will experience. That I'm very proud of you guys and excited for you. So this will be great. Is she going to be with you in Chicago, or is she going to be in Chile?
No, she'll be in Chicago. Yep.
All right, cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, we'll get a chance to hang out a minute if you got any time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome, man.
Right.
Awesome.
Well, this has been another episode of Inside Scoop with Alex and Jeff. With us is Jackson Rudolph. I'm Alex Dingman.
I'm Jeff Doss. See you guys next time.